And now then, with that out of the way, let's talk about main topic number 4. And our fourth main topic, interestingly, is about censorship. Now, I've discussed this several times on this show. I know that some people don't care. I think it's actually really important because we live in an age of cancel culture. And in an age of cancel culture, you cannot trust your media with the big companies. I know a lot of people have switched to digital. Like they just stream things, they buy their stuff digitally. But the problem with buying your stuff digitally is that it can be altered, it can be removed. In fact, I remember how 10 years ago I bought the Toy Story movies on Blu-ray 3D, and with those Blu-ray 3Ds came digital codes that I could redeem and put them on my digital locker. And I did that. Now, here's the thing. About a year ago, it came to people's attention that in Toy Story 2, there is a couch casting gag in the blooper reel that has been removed from Disney+. Now, that concerned me because, well, I don't think you should be censoring movies like that. I don't think you should. So I went to Vudu, where my copy had been redeemed for 10 years, and I watched that part of the movie. And sure enough, that joke had been removed. Now, that code came with my physical copy, and my physical copy is obviously still has the gag. But if I had bought that movie digitally, they still would have altered the movie without even consulting me first, because they have the right to do that. You're not owning it, you're renting it. And so, Timothy P. Carney, a senior columnist for the Washington Examiner, wrote this opinion piece that I actually agree with quite a bit, and it's something you really should consider. Now, have you bought an ebook of Coming Apart by Charles Murray? I think a better example would have been Animal Farm by George Orwell, but you know. Or maybe you bought Gone with the Wind on some video streaming service. Perhaps you've paid for Hamilton, The Simpsons, or Shakespeare's Othello in digital format. Are you ready for them all to disappear from your digital library for being problematic in the eyes of Amazon, Google, or Apple? That's a live question in a cancel culture where corporate America seems to be uniformly on the idea of the left-wing culture warriors. It's also a great reason for you to build up your real-life library of books, records, DVDs, CDs, newspapers, and other physical media. HBO temporarily pulled Gone with the Wind from its streaming service. We've talked about that several times on this show. That's not a huge deal, especially since they later put it back up. But it's easy... Sorry, it moved. But it's easy to see the early rise of a wave of cancelizations in which big tech just erases problematic stories or songs or movies or any work by problematic authors or creators. If you tried to pay for the entire run of The Simpsons, you probably found that an episode with Michael Jackson was removed from the supposed completed works. One of the creators had an unsettled defense that, I'm against book burning of any kind, but this is our book and we're allowed to take out a chapter. That was James L. Brooks. He knew what he was doing was wrong. Unfortunately, similar reasoning applies to the platform owners. Amazon, Google, Apple cannot come to your house and torch your CDs. But as long as you're using their virtual bookshelf, they can remove chapters that clash with their worldview. YouTube regularly pulls videos for ideological violations or videos that clash with proclamations of politicized and corrupted multinational entities. Amazon has made similar decisions. It's not far-fetched to imagine your digital content disappearing. Apple could just decide to erase that Pogues song for a bad word. Poof, gone. Amazon could remove Mel Gibson works that you thought you owned. Certainly any and all Charles Murray books could be canceled. Facebook is under immense pressure to take down content because it's too Trumpy. And for those of you who are not aware of what that means, and I was tempted to talk about this in a video, but I didn't because I was afraid of the backlash. But you know what? I'm kind of beyond the backlash. So what's going on is that basically, Twitter was starting to fact check what Donald Trump was doing, which I don't know what gives Twitter the authority to do that, but whatever. Well, they wanted Facebook to start taking down not only problematic stuff that Trump was writing, but problematic Trump supporters who really supported Trump and said these people are hateful and everything. And I am not going to get into that, only to say that not all Trump supporters are hateful people. They are not. It's just factually not true. And Mark Zuckerberg basically said we're not going to do that. That's a freedom of speech issue, and we are not going to take it down. And that resulted in a boycott of Facebook, where Facebook has now lost over $8 billion worth of advertisers. Now, I don't like Mark Zuckerberg, and I have huge issues with Facebook, but I actually respect Mark Zuckerberg quite a bit because his response was pretty much, yeah, whatever, you'll be back. And he's standing up to the Twitter mob, as it's called. Like, people want him to censor and cancel, and he said no. I respect him for not doing that. However, the point remains that Facebook, along with many companies, are pressured to take things down that are problematic. Now, Twitter says it will pull down your tweets if you violate their ideological rules. And that's actually true. I mean, you can watch videos by Tim Pool to find out how that works, but Twitter has listed certain things, like if you say something like this, it is considered hate speech in Twitter's eyes, which most rational people look at says, but that's actually a difference of opinion. So anyway, the disappearance of your digital media is something commentators have long warned about. You don't really own your digital books. What's to stop them from canceling problematic chapters or works or entire authors? Michael Brendan Doughtry made the point on Twitter a few weeks back, where he wrote, "The mania for political revision and excision makes me wonder how long it will be until owning physical media that can't be re-edited by major corporations is considered suspicious." Sunday night, the Washington Post brought that concern back to the forefront with a story that incidentally highlighted the differences between cancelable digital media and less cancelable physical books. The Washington Post promoted the piece with a tweet that sounded like an endorsement of book burning. And here's what the Washington Post wrote this. Perspective. While offensive TV shows get pulled, problematic books are still inspiring debate and conversation. Well, yes, Washington Post, that is what, books are supposed to do. Now, you can consider them problematic. Like, for example, I know a lot of people who consider Atlas Shrugged to be a problematic book. I do not think it's a problematic book. I just think it's a really, really poorly written one, in my opinion. That was one of the hardest books to finish. I'm sorry. But here's the thing. Someone says it's problematic, and you can read it and say, yes, I agree it's problematic, or no, I don't think it's problematic, or some people can say, I don't think it's either. I think it's just badly written. But what you want to do, what happens is that person who thinks it's problematic, they would want to get rid of the book. Now, here's the thing. I actually typically go to sleep watching Family Guy. And there's an awful episode of Family Guy called Not All Dogs Go to Heaven. And in my opinion, this episode was like a complete bait and switch. They sold it on the fact that the cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation was going to be in it. And the storyline was about how Brian came out to an atheist to the town people, and that his rationalization for God not existing was basically because Meg was ugly. And it's a pretty bad episode. It doesn't make a very good case for anything, and it's not funny. But there's a scene near the end, and it shows a bunch of church people burning problematic books. So they're burning The Origin of Species, A History of Time, and Common Sense for First Graders. And yet when I see, and of course the point is clear that you're not supposed to be burning these books. I mean, even if you don't agree with the books, there's value to them still, and there's a discussion to be had. And yet Twitter does not seem to care about canceling problematic works. And I think, and it's concerning that the Washington Post is actually talking like, problematic books are still inspiring debate and conversation, when that's why I love reading, because it should inspire debate or conversation. Like, what are they saying? That basically they don't want the debate and conversation? They just want people to feel this way without understanding why they feel this way? It's ridiculous. Now, this art opinion continues. The story itself suggests nothing of the sort. Instead, it offers an, at the times, weak-kneed defense of problematic books, which is good. Is Othello a racist play, or is it a fledgling critique of racism, the writer asks. And most important, is that a distinction we're willing to investigate more? Maybe the Washington Post social media managers quietly lament that they can't cancel the J.K. Rowling, Joseph Ratzinger, or Wendy Berry tomes on your shelf, or maybe they were trolling for hate clicks. Nevertheless, with digital erasure blooming, it's time to stock up on DVDs, CDs, and most importantly, books. The more problematic, the better. And yeah, so I totally agree. And, again, it's not even the first time. Like 7 years ago, there was a real life situation where Amazon, because of course it's Amazon, decided that for whatever reason, they didn't want to let people keep their digital books of Animal Farm by George Orwell, or 1984. And they removed those books from people's devices, and people noticed, and they didn't get refunds because they're not entitled to refunds. You agree in the user terms that they can do that. So this is a problem, and I think it's getting worse and worse and worse. So that's one of the reasons I still buy physical media. Now, I do buy a little bit of digital media, I will admit, but I will still always prefer having a physical copy of something that I really want to revisit, because I just don't want to be taken away. In fact, something that happened fairly recently with the Surviving R. Kelly docuseries was that Lady Gaga decided that she did not want her duet with R. Kelly to be on the Art Pop album anymore, so she removed it. Now, if you go to any streaming service, it's not there unless you go to YouTube. So there's, bootlegged copies of it all the time there. But I have it on CD, and Lady Gaga cannot take that away. And granted, it's not the best song on the album, but the fact that the songs are created carefully, they're selected in a certain order. Putting together an album is an art in and of itself. And the fact that you would just so easily remove a chapter, if you will, thus interrupting the flow of the album, concerns me, especially since when she worked with R. Kelly, the allegations weren't exactly secret. They were well known. But anyway, that's my thoughts on that. What do you think? Are you concerned about the digital future and what this means for free speech? I'd love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Now then, let's get to our final topic, and it's interesting that we were talking about cancel culture, and let's go back to this article one more time. Let me go down here. And it ends with it saying, nevertheless, with digital erasure blossoming, it is time to stock up on DVDs, CDs, and most importantly, books. The more problematic, the better. It's very fitting that that's how they ended that article, because after I read that, I was kind of curious, okay, what is the state of physical media in America? I mean, cancel culture is clearly a threat to our history, our art. I do believe that Twitter, if it had its way, would look at my Best Picture winning shelf and say, get rid of All Quiet on the Western Front, get rid of Cimarron, get rid of The Great Ziegfeld, get rid of Rebecca, get rid of Ben-Hur, get rid of Lawrence of Arabia, get rid of West Side Story. They would ask to get rid of a lot of these things because there are problematic elements that are outdated. But they're on my shelf, and as long as I have a working disc player, which I think disc players will still be around for a long time. People say, well, what happens when all the manufacturers stop making them? Well, look, Nintendo hasn't made the Super Nintendo for a very, very long time. And there are people making knockoff consoles that can play SNES cartridges. So I'm not concerned about that. That said, the state of physical media, at least when it comes to movies, is not looking good. So this is the digital bit. And by the way, I do converse with Bill Hunt on Twitter sometimes. He follows me. He's a really good guy. And he decided to do some research about what physical media was selling like. Now then, as at one point he states, now as many of you know, I've reported previously on the yearly decline of physical media sales. But if you've missed it, here are the gory details. Physical movie disc sales have dropped every year for the last 9 years, and in the last 3 years by double-digit percentages. Per the DEG, the decline was 18% in 2019, 14.6% in 2018, 14.1% in 2017, 9.6% in 16, 12, and 15, 10, and 14, 8, and 13, 5, and 12, and 12.3 and 11. And that's not good. And that is the reality disc fans are facing. We here at The Bits don't like it any more than you guys do because we're movie and disc fans first and foremost. But those are the numbers. That knowledge is what motivated my recent feature. Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. Now then, the reason this article came up was because they were kind of seeing, like, during the pandemic, if there was a boost to physical media sales. And, well, for a few weeks, disc sales were up. They were up. But they ultimately ended up going down. And in fact, the most recent update, which is 6/27, that disc sales were down 23.20%. This is not a great trend if you want your stories and your art to be protected. Now, this does raise the question, well, okay, so physical media is probably going to die at some point. What is the alternative? Like, what can we do to protect our stuff in the future? And that might be Kaleidoscape. Now, this is not a sponsored video, and I have not dealt with this personally, but I read this article, and this is a fascinating way to look at the whole digital thing. Now, as a little bit of a reference, this is what VHS players used to look like. They had Laserdisc, and they had DVD. And then, like, here's kind of like the biggest problem with physical media. Whenever they create like a new format, you have to rebuy your movie. So it's like, okay, here's a DVD, here's a Blu-ray, and here's a 4K. If you bought them brand new, they were $20 to $30 each time. So, you're paying a lot of money to basically buy one movie over and over and over again. But, and here's the thing, these devices, while convenient, do not offer the best quality necessarily. So this is what Kaleidoscape is doing. They want to bring digital ownership to the home in a premium theater experience. As stated in this article, essentially, Kaleidoscape is a company dedicated to delivering a luxury home theater experience. Their goal is to provide the absolute best quality movie viewing option that's possible in the home. And since the company's founding in 2001, they focus on developing the trust within the film industry and the custom and robust technical engineering on the hardware side required to achieve that goal. And the way that this works is that they sell you these streaming devices, some of which have disk drives, by the way. They want to make having the discs an option. And you can buy your movies. You can buy your movies. You can see, like, right there. And first of all, they start by obtaining the very best source material possible, the Hollywood studio mezzanine files for each film, and using a proprietary process they developed in-house, they create a master quality digital version of that film that's designed bit for bit to preserve the maximum picture and sound fidelity. That film then becomes available on Kaleidoscape's online movie store, which you see right here, where customers can purchase access to it in perpetuity for prices that are roughly comparable to the corresponding disc version. But once purchased, rather than streaming that film in a highly compressed format, the movie file is downloaded in its entirety to Kaleidoscape's Strato movie player, or Terra movie server. The Strato is a disc-less movie player, a sleek-looking silver and black hard drive that fits neatly into your home theater. It currently comes in two sizes, one with a 6 terabyte hard drive and one with a 12 terabyte. And by the way, I saw on their website, because I was on their website, that there are some that have 40 terabytes. But you don't need to worry about storing all your films you purchase from Kaleidoscape locally. They exist in the company's online cloud as well. Every movie purchase you make is always available in your account, accessible for download at any time. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying this is going to completely make me feel comfortable buying digital movies completely. Because, there's still that concern about what happens with problematic material, and I think one of the reasons studios want to go digital is because they basically don't want to sell you their movies. They want to control it. You're just renting them. So there's always going to be that concern unless there are laws that specifically state that digital copies can't be taken away from you or altered without your consent first. But I have to say, this seems pretty nice. Like, even the quality, like, look, Disney's physical Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker 4K release comes on a 66 gigabyte disc. The Kaleidoscape 4K download is 80.8 gigabytes. Avengers Infinity War comes on a 66 gigabyte disc. The Kaleidoscape 4K download is 86.3 gigabytes. Avengers Endgame comes on a 66 gigabyte disc, but the Kaleidoscape is a whopping 103.3 gigabytes. So the difference is readily apparent to anyone attuned to high-end video quality. The added video data improves the color and dimensionality of the image considerably, and the added audio data improves the robust and spaciousness of the soundstage. I evaluate video quality for a living and have been looking at video professionally for over 30 years now. Trust me when I say this is the first time I have ever experienced anything better than 4K disc in my home theater. And by the way, I like this. Now, this is, of course, a niche product, but it looks like a very high-quality niche product. And I have to say, if this is what the future of digital movies are going to look like, I'd probably feel a little bit more comfortable. It still doesn't answer my big concern about whether or not, this stuff can be taken away from you at one point. But it looks like the quality is good. I definitely would want to look into getting a Kaleidoscape player, one with a disc drive preferably. And who knows, because I have a pretty nice TV, but I know at some point, when we get our own house and everything, I will probably want to invest in a really big screen. I would probably want to invest in an IMAX screen. Because if there's one thing I definitely love, it's my movies, and I want to watch it in the best way possible. Some people invest in expensive cars. I'll probably be investing in an expensive home entertainment theater. And Kaleidoscape might just be what I need for convenience and quality and hopefully ownership. Especially since, with 40 terabytes, a lot of those, I would just make sure that whatever movies I absolutely could not live without would always be downloaded somewhere. So it looks like Kaleidoscape allows me to do that. But anyway, I would like to know what you all think about this. Does this sound like a product that you would be interested in? I would love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.